brought to you by Soundlibra.com. You can find a direct link to our full library in the description of this audio, or visit us anytime at Soundlibra.com. Welcome to Think in Models, a podcast to elevate your thinking. Before we dive into the substance, a quick heads up that this series is for educational purposes only and doesn't constitute professional, financial, or legal advice.
Today, we're diving into episode 1 and a concept that can truly change how you approach any problem.
We're talking about mental models. Think of them as frameworks or tools that help you understand how the world works. They're like lenses that you put on to see things more clearly.
So, not just random thoughts, but structured ways of looking at things, like a map for navigating complex situations?
Precisely. Instead of figuring everything out from scratch, mental models give you a pre-built understanding. Mental models are the blueprints for thinking. They help us make better decisions, solve problems more effectively, and understand the world with greater depth.
So, if they're like blueprints, what makes a good mental model? Are some better than others?
A good mental model is versatile. It can be applied to a wide range of problems. It's also accurate, meaning it reflects reality reasonably well. And importantly, it should be simple enough to understand and remember. If it's too complicated, you're less likely to use it.
Versatile, accurate, and simple. Got it. So, it's about building a toolbox of these models.
Exactly. And over this series, we're going to explore some of the most powerful and widely applicable mental models. We'll talk about things like first principles, which is about breaking a problem down to its most basic truths. We'll explore inversion, which means thinking backwards to find solutions. We'll even look at the circle of competence, understanding what you know and, more importantly, what you don't know.
It sounds like these models are designed to help us avoid common thinking traps, too, like jumping to conclusions or only seeing one side of an issue.
You've hit the nail on the head. Many of these models are designed to counteract our natural biases. For example, our tendency to focus only on the immediate consequences of a decision rather than the longer-term effects. We'll be covering second-order thinking, which is all about looking beyond those immediate results.
That's so important. So often, a quick fix leads to bigger problems down the road. And you mentioned inversion, thinking backwards. How does that work?
It's fascinating, isn't it? Instead of asking, how can I achieve X? You ask, what would prevent me from achieving X, and how can I avoid those things? It's a powerful way to identify potential pitfalls and create a more robust path forward. If you want to be successful, rather than focusing on all the things you should do, you could focus on all the things that would guarantee failure, and then make sure you don't do them. It's often easier to avoid mistakes than to engineer success.
I can see how that would simplify things and help you avoid getting stuck. It's like, instead of trying to find the perfect ingredients for a cake, you first figure out what would make the cake taste terrible, and then just don't add those things.
A perfect analogy. And that brings us to another concept we'll touch upon, Occam's razor. Have you heard of that one?
I think so. Isn't it about the simplest explanation being the best?
That's the core idea. When you have multiple explanations for something, the simplest one is usually the most likely to be correct. It's about cutting away unnecessary complexity. It saves mental energy and often leads you to the most probable truth.
So, if my car breaks down, Occam's razor would suggest assuming I just ran out of gas before I start assuming some complex engine failure.
Exactly. It's a reminder not to overcomplicate things when a straightforward answer is available. And this approach ties into another model we'll explore, Hanlon's razor.
No, I don't.
Hanlon's razor states, never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by incompetence or mistake. It's about giving people the benefit of the doubt. Instead of assuming someone intentionally did something to harm you, consider that they might have just made a mistake.
Oh, wow. That's a really valuable one. It could prevent so much interpersonal conflict if people really internalize that.
It truly can. It shifts your perspective from antagonism to understanding. Now, As we move through this series, we'll also delve into systems thinking, which is about understanding how different parts of a whole interact. And we'll explore leverage, finding ways to get the most impact from your efforts.
It sounds like an incredible journey. We're not just learning abstract theories, but practical tools for everyday life and professional challenges.
That's the goal. These mental models aren't just for academics or CEOs. They're for anyone who wants to think more clearly, make better choices, and navigate the complexities of life with more confidence. They help you move from reactive problem solving to proactive strategizing.
So, in essence, mental models are our mental toolkit for understanding the world. They provide structure, insight, and a more effective way to make decisions. We've touched on a few foundational ones today, like first principles, inversion, Occam's razor, and Hanlon's razor, and we've teased some more to come.
That's a perfect summary, Lisa. By building this toolkit, you equip yourself to handle a vast array of situations with greater wisdom and efficiency. We've set the stage for what we believe will be an incredibly impactful series for your thinking process.
I'm already excited to hear more.
And so are we. Next episode, First Principles, Deconstructing Reality. Welcome back to Thinking Models. Last time, we explored mental models. Now let's tackle first principles thinking.
Last episode, we talked about how mental models are shortcuts. But what happens when those shortcuts aren't enough? That's where first principles come in.
At their core, first principles are fundamental truths. They are the irreducible, foundational building blocks from which everything else is derived. Think of them as the absolute bedrock of knowledge.
So, it's like peeling back all the layers of an onion until you get to the very core?
That's a great analogy, Lisa. Or think about building with Legos. First principles are the individual bricks. You can build anything, but you can't break a brick down further.
Okay, I'm starting to grasp it. It's about getting back to the most basic, undeniable truths. But how does this help us solve problems?
When we face a complex issue, we often think by analogy. We say this is like X and X worked, so this will work too. But situations aren't always the same. First principles thinking forces us to question those analogies and deconstruct the problem into its basic components.
So instead of asking, what have others done? We ask, what are the absolute fundamental truths of this situation?
Precisely. This approach is famously championed by people like Elon Musk. When they wanted to make space travel cheaper, they asked, what is a rocket actually made of? What are the raw materials? What are the base costs of those materials?
So they looked at the aluminum, the titanium, the fuel, the absolute raw components, and figured out the minimum possible cost, rather than accepting the existing market price for a finished rocket.
Exactly. They rejected the conventional wisdom of rockets cost this much and instead asked, what is the absolute minimum cost to create the components of a rocket from basic elements? This deconstruction allows for true innovation because you're not bound by existing solutions. You're building from scratch based on reality.
And I imagine this requires a willingness to challenge assumptions. If I'm clinging to my mental models, I might not be open to examining those fundamental truths.
Absolutely. It requires intellectual humility and a deep-seated curiosity. It means asking why repeatedly until you reach the bedrock of understanding. Why does this work? Why is it done this way? What are the absolute, undeniable facts here?
Can you give us another example, perhaps something a bit more everyday?
Sure. Let's think about cooking. If you want to make a cake, you might look up a recipe and follow it. That's reasoning by analogy. This recipe worked for others, so it should work for me. But what if you don't have all the ingredients? Or you want to create a totally new kind of cake?
So, with first principles thinking, I would break down what a cake is.
Right? What are the fundamental components of a cake? You have a structure, often from flour. You have sweetness from sugar. You have fat, for richness from butter or oil. You have leavening, to make it rise, from eggs or baking powder. You have moisture. These are the first principles of cake.
So once I understand those fundamental components and their roles, I could then substitute ingredients or combine them in new ways. If I'm out of eggs, for example, I could think about what eggs contribute, leavening and binding, and find other ingredients that fulfill those functions.
You got it. That's first principles applied to baking. You're not just following a pre-existing model. You're understanding the underlying mechanics and can then innovate. This deconstruction is incredibly powerful for problem solving. When you break a problem down to its first principles, you can see solutions that are invisible when you're only looking at the surface or relying on past examples.
It sounds like a way to cut through complexity and avoid getting bogged down in conventional thinking.
Exactly. It's about stripping away assumptions and opinions to get to what is demonstrably true. And once you have those truths, you can really begin to build something new or solve a problem in a truly novel way. It requires courage to question what everyone else accepts.
So, to recap, first principles thinking means breaking down a problem to its most fundamental, irreducible truths. It's about understanding the basic building blocks rather than just accepting existing solutions or analogies. This allows for deconstruction, innovation, and a clearer path to novel solutions.
Well said, Lisa. It's a critical tool for anyone looking to think more deeply and solve problems more effectively. Next time, we'll explore a related but distinct concept, thinking backwards to move forward with inversion. Next episode, Inversion, thinking backwards for forward progress. Welcome back to Thinking Models. Last time, we delved into the power of first principles, breaking down complex problems to their fundamental truths.
And today, Alex, we're going to explore a fascinating and often counterintuitive mental model, inversion. It's all about thinking backward to move forward.
Inversion. That sounds like a paradox. Lisa, how can thinking backward lead to progress?
That's exactly what makes it so powerful. Instead of focusing on what we must do to achieve a goal, inversion encourages us to first consider what we absolutely must not do to avoid failure. It's about identifying the roadblocks that would prevent us from succeeding.
So, it's like charting a course by first identifying all the treacherous reefs and hidden shoals, rather than just plotting the direction of the fairway.
Precisely. Think about it. It's often easier to identify the ways we could fail than to definitively map out every single step to success. By understanding what leads to failure, we can then actively avoid those pitfalls, which naturally steers us closer to our desired outcome.
I'm picturing someone trying to build a successful business. Instead of listing all the brilliant innovations they need, they first brainstorm every possible reason why a business might fail.
Exactly. They'd list things like, don't run out of cash, don't alienate your customers, don't hire the wrong people, don't ignore the competition. Then, by actively working to avoid those things, they're laying the groundwork for success. It highlights the critical things they do need to get right, precisely because they've illuminated what leads to disaster.
That makes a lot of sense. It's a defensive strategy that ultimately paves the way for offense. So, what are some classic examples of inversion?
One of the most famous thinkers associated with inversion is Charlie Munger, who frequently uses it. He often talks about the idea of becoming happy. Instead of listing everything one must do to be happy, he asks, what would make me miserable? He identifies things like envy, resentment, excessive gambling, and dishonesty. By avoiding those, he argues, you are well on your way to being happy.
That's brilliant. It simplifies the pursuit of something as complex as happiness by focusing on the clear path away from unhappiness.
and it applies to learning too. Munger also famously said, "Show me the incentives, and I will show you the outcome." He advocates for thinking in terms of incentives to understand behavior. Inverting this, one might ask, what are the incentives that would lead to bad behavior or outcomes? By understanding those perverse incentives, one can design systems that reduce the likelihood of them occurring.
So, if you're trying to create a safe work environment, instead of listing all the ways to improve safety, you might first list all the ways someone could get hurt, and then systematically address each one.
Yes, you're identifying the bad outcomes first. Another common application is in avoiding errors. For instance, in engineering or medicine, rigorous checklists are used to prevent mistakes. These checklists are essentially an application of inversion. What are all the things that could go wrong if we don't do a certain task?
It's like having a pre-flight check for an airplane. You don't just think, how can I fly this plane perfectly? You think, what could cause this plane to crash if I neglect it?
Exactly. And it's not just for grand strategies. You can use inversion in everyday problem solving. Feeling stuck on a project? Instead of asking, what's the next step to finish this? Try asking, what common mistakes do people make at this stage that derail projects?
And what if the answer is, I'm procrastinating?
Then the inverted thinking is, what things make me procrastinate? Perhaps it's an overwhelming task, a lack of clarity, or distractions. By identifying those, you can then take specific actions to combat them. It's about clarity through negation.
So, Lisa, in summary, inversion is a mental model that helps us make better decisions and achieve better outcomes by focusing on what not to do. We identify the paths to failure and then actively steer clear of them, which is often a more direct route to success than trying to plot every single positive step.
That's right. It's about understanding the opposite of what you want to achieve to better understand what you do need to do. By asking, how can I guarantee failure? We often discover the secrets to success. It's a powerful tool for avoiding costly mistakes and clarifying the path forward.
It's a really effective way to cut through complexity, focusing on the most critical elements by their absence.
Absolutely. So, next time you're facing a challenge, try turning it on its head. What's the surest way to fail? And then simply don't do that.
Excellent advice. Next episode, we'll be discussing the circle of competence, knowing what you know, and perhaps more importantly, what you don't know. Welcome back. Last time, we delved into first principles. Now, let's tackle the circle of competence.
The circle of competence. That sounds like a really practical idea. So, Alex, what exactly is it?
Imagine your knowledge and expertise as a circle. Everything inside that circle is something you understand deeply. You have a high degree of competence in these areas. You can make confident, well-informed decisions when operating within this circle.
Okay, so it's about knowing what you know. It's like being a master baker. You know exactly how to make a perfect sourdough, but maybe you wouldn't try to fix your car engine.
Exactly. That's a perfect analogy. It's about recognizing your strengths and your actual, demonstrable expertise. It also, crucially, involves understanding the boundaries of that circle. Knowing what you don't know is just as important as knowing what you do.
That's the part that feels a little harder, right? It's easy to think we know more than we actually do.
It absolutely is. This is where self-awareness and intellectual honesty come into play. People tend to overestimate their abilities, especially in areas where they have a little bit of knowledge. This is sometimes called the Dunning-Kruger effect, where less competent people tend to overestimate their competence, while highly competent people tend to underestimate their relative competence.
So, staying within your circle of competence means being honest about those limits?
Precisely. When you're working within your circle, Your decisions are typically grounded in sound reasoning and a deep understanding of the relevant factors. You can anticipate potential outcomes with a higher degree of accuracy. Think about a chess grandmaster. They understand the board, the pieces, and the countless strategic possibilities at a profound level. They make moves with a high probability of success because they are operating entirely within their circle of competence.
But what happens when you step outside that circle? What are the consequences of making decisions in areas where you're not truly competent?
That's where things can get risky. When you operate outside your circle, you're essentially guessing or relying on incomplete information or on the opinions of others without truly vetting them yourself. This uncertainty increases the likelihood of making mistakes, sometimes costly ones. You might misjudge risks, misunderstand implications, or simply be unaware of critical factors. It's like that sourdough baker trying to diagnose a complex engine problem. They might cause more damage than they fix.
So, the advice is to stick to what you know? It sounds a bit restrictive. How do you grow if you never step outside your circle?
That's a fantastic point, and it highlights the dynamic nature of competence. The goal isn't to be permanently confined, but to be disciplined about when and how you expand your circle. Growth happens when you consciously seek to learn and develop expertise in new areas. But this expansion should be deliberate, not accidental or born of overconfidence.
How does one go about expanding their circle of competence wisely?
It involves a few key steps. First, relentless learning. Read books, take courses, seek out mentors, and engage with people who are experts in the field you want to understand better. Second, practical experience. Theory is one thing, but applying that knowledge, making mistakes, and learning from them is where true competence is built. Third, and this is crucial, seek feedback. Ask trusted individuals to evaluate your understanding and your decisions. Be open to constructive criticism.
So, it's a process of building up your knowledge and skills incrementally. It's not about becoming an expert overnight.
Exactly. Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, two of the most successful investors in history, heavily emphasize this principle. They famously talk about staying within their circle of competence. They understand businesses and industries they can analyze deeply, and they avoid those they don't. This discipline has protected them from countless potential errors. They don't pretend to understand complex biotechnologies or obscure financial instruments if they haven't put in the years of study and work to truly grasp them.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about integrity in your decision making. You're not wearing a mask of expertise you don't possess.
Precisely. And it's not just about financial decisions. This applies to your career, your personal relationships, and any area where you need to make choices. If you're managing a project outside your technical expertise, you should heavily rely on and listen to the experts on your team. If you're considering a business venture in an unfamiliar market, you should either do the deep work to understand it or partner with someone who has.
So, to recap what we've discussed about the circle of competence, it's about understanding the boundaries of your knowledge and expertise. Operating within your circle leads to more confident and accurate decisions because you have a deep understanding of the factors involved. Stepping outside your circle without adequate knowledge significantly increases the risk of making errors. And to grow, expansion of your circle should be a deliberate process of learning, gaining experience, and seeking feedback.
That's a perfect summary, Lisa. The circle of competence is a foundational mental model for making better, more rational decisions throughout your life. It's about being honest with yourself about what you know and what you don't.
It really encourages a commitment to continuous learning. Knowing your limits is the first step to intelligently expanding them.
Indeed. And that idea of intelligently expanding our knowledge and capabilities leads us perfectly into our next episode, where we'll explore opportunity cost, the hidden price of every choice we make. Next episode, opportunity cost, the hidden price of every choice. back to Thinking Models. Last time, we understood the circle of competence.
Knowing your limits is key to making smart decisions. Today, we explore opportunity cost.
Opportunity cost is the value of the best alternative you give up when making a choice. It's the hidden price of your decision.
So, it's the benefits I miss out on from the option I didn't pick?
Exactly. If you spend $50 on a book, the opportunity cost is also the enjoyment you would have gained from dinner with that money.
It's not just the money, but the experience I forego. How does this apply to bigger decisions?
For a business owner, investing in a new product means foregoing potential sales from marketing existing ones. The opportunity cost is lost market share.
So, to make a good decision, we must evaluate the potential gains from unchosen paths.
Precisely. Considering opportunity cost forces us to look at the trade-offs, not just the immediate benefits.
This sounds like it can prevent regret. If I considered the missed opportunity, I might be more at peace with my choice.
It leads to more rational resource allocation. Time, money, and energy are finite. Opportunity cost helps you use them for the greatest overall benefit.
Consider a job offer with a high salary but a long commute versus a lower paying job closer to home.
The higher paying job's opportunity cost includes commute costs, vehicle wear, and most importantly, the time lost that could be spent with family or on hobbies.
And for the closer job, the opportunity cost is the extra money from the other offer. But the benefits of saved time and reduced stress might outweigh it.
You got it. It's asking, what am I giving up to get this? And is what I'm gaining worth what I'm giving up?
It moves us from, is this good, to, is this the best use of my resources, given the alternatives?
That's a perfect summary. Governments face this too. Investing billions in a highway means foregoing potential investments in education or healthcare.
It's all about trade-offs. Every choice has a price, even if it's just the potential of what you could have had instead.
A common mistake is only considering the most obvious alternative. The true opportunity cost is the best among all unchosen options.
So, we should brainstorm all viable alternatives and identify the most valuable one we're passing up.
Exactly. It requires more mental effort, but provides invaluable clarity and a broader perspective.
Whenever faced with a significant decision, pause and ask, what am I giving up to get this?
That's an excellent way to frame it. It leads to more optimal outcomes and a better use of precious resources.
In summary, opportunity cost is the value of the next best alternative you give up. By evaluating these trade-offs, we can allocate our resources more effectively for better outcomes.
Well said, Lisa. That brings us to the end of our discussion on opportunity cost. It encourages us to consider the broader implications of our choices.
It's another essential tool for our mental model toolkit.
Next episode, probabilistic thinking, navigating uncertainty with confidence.
Sounds fascinating. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks for listening. Welcome back to Thinking Models. Last time, we explored opportunity cost, understanding the true price of our decisions. Now, we're tackling probabilistic thinking.
Probabilistic thinking. That sounds a little mathy, Alex. Are we going to be crunching numbers?
Not at all. It's a way of approaching the world. It's about understanding that most things aren't certain. They have a likelihood, a probability of happening. Think of it as embracing uncertainty with a strategy.
So, instead of saying this will happen, we're saying this is likely to happen?
Exactly. When you cross the street, you assess the probability of a car appearing. You're already using probabilistic thinking, often without labeling it. This mental model helps us do it more consciously.
So, it's about developing a better intuition for likelihoods, even with incomplete information?
Precisely. Instead of saying, I'm certain my new business venture will be a success. We can reframe it as, based on the market research, I estimate there's a 70% chance of success.
That 70% sounds much more grounded. It acknowledges the possibility of failure, which is crucial for planning. So, are we also looking at the potential outcomes, the upside and the downside?
Absolutely. We can begin to weigh the probabilities of different outcomes against their potential impact. Imagine you're considering two investment options. Option A has a 90% chance of small gain, and option B has a 30% chance of a very large gain, but also a 70% chance of a significant loss.
Oh, wow.
So, it's not just about how likely something is, but also about what happens if it does or doesn't happen.
Exactly. You can think about the expected value. For option A, if the small gain is $100, then 90% of 100 is $90. For option B, if the large gain is $1,000 and the loss is $500, you'd calculate the expected value by taking the probability of the gain multiplied by the gain and adding that to the probability of the loss multiplied by the loss.
So, for option B, 0.30 times 1000 plus 0.70 times negative 500. That's 300 minus 350, giving an expected value of negative $50.
You got it. In that scenario, even though option B has the allure of a big win, statistically, option A is the better bet because its expected value is higher. This is probabilistic thinking in action, assessing likelihoods and potential consequences to make a more rational choice.
That's a really clear example. It moves beyond just gut feeling. It's like shining a light on the potential paths ahead.
And it helps us avoid common cognitive biases, like the optimism bias, where we tend to overestimate positive outcomes and underestimate negative ones. By consciously thinking in probabilities, we confront the less appealing possibilities.
Okay, so it helps us be more realistic. What else does it do for us?
It fosters intellectual humility. When you embrace probabilities, you acknowledge that you don't have all the answers. It makes you more open to new information and less resistant to changing your mind. Probabilistic thinkers are more adaptable.
That makes perfect sense. If you believe something is 100% true, it's hard to accept evidence to the contrary. But if you think it's, say, 80% true, then finding out it's actually 75% true isn't a personal attack. It's just refining your understanding.
Precisely. And this leads to better forecasting. We can make more accurate predictions, not by claiming to know the future, but by understanding the odds. This isn't about being a fortune teller. It's about becoming a more informed strategist.
So, on a practical level, how can we start incorporating this into our daily lives?
Start small. When you're faced with a decision, ask yourself, what are the possible outcomes? And what's the likelihood of each outcome? Don't feel you need an exact number. You can use ranges. It's very likely, it's somewhat unlikely, about a 50-50 chance. This forces you to consider more than just the most obvious or desired outcome.
So, instead of, I'm going to ace this presentation, maybe it's, I think there's a good chance I'll do well because I'm prepared, but there's also a small chance I might mess up a section.
Exactly. And then you can think about contingency plans. If there's a small chance you might mess up a section, what can you do? Have your notes ready? Practice that section extra. This proactive approach is incredibly empowering.
It sounds like it's about building mental resilience too, not being blindsided when things don't go perfectly.
Absolutely. Life is a series of probabilities, and by understanding and embracing that, we can navigate its complexities with more confidence and make decisions that are more aligned with our long-term goals. We're not seeking certainty, but rather competence in dealing with uncertainty.
So, to recap, probabilistic thinking is about moving away from absolutes and towards thinking in terms of likelihoods. It helps us assess risks and rewards, combats biases like optimism bias, fosters intellectual humility, and leads to better forecasting. We can start by using descriptive terms and considering potential outcomes and their chances, which helps us prepare and be more resilient.
You've nailed it, Lisa. It's a powerful framework for making smarter decisions in a world that's anything but certain.
Fascinating. It really does change how you look at things.
It truly does. Next episode, we'll be exploring another fundamental tool for simplifying complex problems, Occam's razor, the principle of simplicity. Welcome back to Thinking Models. Today, we're sharpening our focus with a principle that's been used for centuries to simplify our understanding of complex issues.
That's right, Alex. Today, we're tackling Occam's razor. It sounds a bit fancy, but at its heart, it's a remarkably straightforward idea. The simplest explanation is usually the best. This principle helps us cut through noise and get to the core of a problem.
Exactly, Lisa. The core idea, often attributed to William of Occam, a 14th century Franciscan friar and philosopher, is that when you have multiple competing explanations for something, the one that makes the fewest assumptions is the most likely to be correct. It's about parsimony or economy in explanation.
So, if we have two theories and one requires us to believe in a whole host of invisible forces and in proven mechanisms, while the other can explain the same phenomenon with just a couple of basic, already understood principles, Occam's razor tells us to lean towards the second one. Is that a good way to think about it?
That's a perfect analogy. Think of it like this. Imagine you come home and your cookie jar is empty. You could hypothesize that an alien race used advanced cloaking technology to beam the cookies into their spaceship, or you could hypothesize that your roommate ate them. Which explanation requires fewer extraordinary and proven assumptions?
Definitely the roommate. The alien theory requires believing in aliens, advanced cloaking technology, and their specific craving for your cookies. The roommate theory just requires believing your roommate likes cookies, which is a pretty safe assumption.
Precisely. Occam's razor isn't a strict scientific law. It's more of a heuristic, a mental shortcut. It doesn't guarantee the simplest explanation is always true, but it's a powerful guide for developing hypotheses and theories. It helps us avoid unnecessary complexity that can cloud our judgment.
And this applies to so many areas, doesn't it? It's not just for philosophical debates or scientific theories. We can use it in everyday problem solving, in business, even in understanding people's behavior.
Absolutely. Let's consider a business example. Say a company's sales suddenly drop. One complex explanation might involve a subtle shift in global economic indicators, a competitor's unannounced marketing strategy, and a newly discovered psychological phenomenon affecting consumer behavior.
That's a lot of ifs and maybes before even getting to a solution.
Right. Now, consider a simpler explanation. The recent product update had a significant bug that frustrated customers, or perhaps a well-liked salesperson left the company and their clients followed. Both are direct, observable, and require fewer assumptions. Occam's razor suggests we investigate these simpler possibilities first.
So, it's about focusing our investigative energy on the most probable causes before getting lost in elaborate, unlikely scenarios. It helps prevent overthinking a situation into oblivion.
That's a great way to put it. Overthinking often involves adding layers of complexity that aren't supported by evidence. Occam's razor acts as a filter, helping us trim away those unnecessary layers. It's like a mental pruning shear.
I like that visual. And it encourages us to look for evidence. The simpler explanation is usually the one that can be tested and verified more easily. If we suspect the roommate ate the cookies, we can look for crumbs, ask them directly, or check their social media for evidence of a midnight snack. If we suspect aliens, well, that's a bit harder to investigate.
A bit. This principle encourages us to be precise in our thinking and in our language. When we explain things, we should aim for clarity and conciseness, avoiding jargon or convoluted reasoning unless absolutely necessary.
How can we actively apply Occam's razor in our daily lives, Alex? It seems straightforward, but in the heat of the moment, we can sometimes jump to the most dramatic conclusion.
A great first step is conscious awareness. When you're faced with a problem or an explanation, pause and ask yourself, what are the assumptions here? Are there fewer assumptions I could make that would still explain the situation?
So, a bit of self-questioning. Am I making this more complicated than it needs to be?
Exactly. And also, look for evidence that supports the simple explanation. Don't dismiss the obvious in favor of the obscure. For instance, if you're trying to figure out why you're feeling sluggish, is it more likely a rare tropical disease you've contracted, or more likely that you didn't get enough sleep and had too much sugar?
It's the sleep and sugar, almost every time. Occam's razor helps us avoid confirmation bias too, doesn't it? We might want to believe in a complex, dramatic reason for something, but the simplest explanation is often the most grounded.
That's a very insightful connection, Lisa. By prioritizing simplicity, we're less likely to impose our own desires or biases onto a situation. We're adhering to the principle of minimal assumptions, which is a more objective approach.
So, to recap the key takeaways for our listeners, Occam's razor tells us that when faced with competing explanations, choose the one with the fewest assumptions. It's a heuristic, a mental guide, not a strict law. It helps us simplify, focus investigations, and avoid unnecessary complexity.
And applying it means consciously questioning our assumptions, looking for evidence to support simpler explanations, and striving for clarity in our own thinking and communication. It's about finding elegant solutions and clear understandings.
This principle is so powerful because it cuts through the noise. In a world that often feels overwhelmingly complex, having a tool to simplify our thinking is invaluable. It leads to more effective problem solving and a clearer view of reality.
Indeed, it's a principle that has stood the test of time precisely because it works. It helps us make better decisions by not getting lost in convoluted possibilities.
It reminds me of that old saying, Einstein, don't tell me you're wrong. Just tell me you're wrong in a simpler way.
Or as they say, elegance in simplicity. We've explored the power of choosing the explanation with the fewest assumptions. Next episode, second-order thinking beyond the immediate. Welcome back to Think in Models. Last time, we explored Occam's razor, the principle that the simplest explanation is usually the best. Today, we're going to delve into something a bit more nuanced, but equally powerful, second-order thinking.
Second-order thinking. It sounds like it's about looking beyond the obvious, doesn't it? When we make a decision, we usually think about what will happen right away. That's first-order thinking.
Exactly, Lisa. First-order thinking is about the immediate and obvious consequences. If I'm hungry, the first-order consequence of eating a slice of cake is feeling satisfied. It's simple, direct.
But then, perhaps an hour later, you might feel a sugar crash or a bit guilty. Those are the next consequences, right?
You've got it. Those are the second-order consequences. Second-order thinking is about asking, and then what? It's about considering not just the immediate impact, but the subsequent impacts and the impacts after that. It's looking at the ripple effect of a decision.
So, it's about anticipating unintended consequences? That feels really important for avoiding mistakes.
Absolutely. Think about it like this. Imagine you're playing a game of chess. Your first move might be to capture a pawn. That's a good, immediate gain. But what if that pawn was actually protecting your king? Your attacker might see that, and your king is suddenly in danger. That's a second-order consequence you might have missed if you only focused on capturing the pawn.
That's a great analogy. So, second-order thinking involves a bit of foresight, a bit of strategic planning that goes beyond the immediate win. It's about playing not just one move ahead, but many.
Precisely. And it's not just about avoiding negative outcomes. It can also help us identify truly optimal solutions. Sometimes a decision that looks less appealing in the short term, a decision that requires more effort or sacrifice now, can lead to far greater rewards down the line.
Can you give us an example of that? Something in the real world?
Sure, consider personal finance. The first order consequence of spending money on a new gadget is immediate pleasure. It feels good to have that new item.
Right.
You get the item, you enjoy it.
But the second order consequences are that you have less money saved. This might mean you can't afford a down payment on a house later, or you have to work longer than you'd prefer. Or the opposite approach. The first order consequence of saving that money might be delayed gratification, not having the gadget right now. It might feel like a sacrifice.
But then the second order consequence is financial security, the ability to buy that house or retire comfortably.
Exactly. You're seeing the power of it. We're trained from a young age to think in the short term. Our reward systems often favor immediate gratification, but truly effective decision-making, especially in complex situations, requires us to break free from that. We need to ask, what are the implications of this action beyond the immediate?
How do we actually do that? It sounds simple in theory, but in practice, how do we consistently think second order or even third order?
That's the million-dollar question. One of the best ways is to consciously build in a pause. Before you act, ask yourself, what are the potential consequences of this action? And then, crucially, ask, what are the potential consequences of those consequences? Sometimes referred to as third-order thinking.
So, it's a layering process, like adding rings to a pond after a stone is dropped.
A perfect metaphor. Another effective technique is to consider the opposite. If you're leaning towards a decision, actively try to argue against it by exploring its negative second-order effects. Play devil's advocate with yourself.
That's an interesting approach. Rather than just looking for confirmation, actively seek out the flaws.
Yes, and it's also helpful to think about systems. Most decisions don't happen in a vacuum. They're part of a larger system, whether that's your personal life, your work environment, or even society. Understanding how your decision interacts with the rest of the system can reveal those crucial second-order effects. We'll touch more on systems later in the series.
So, to recap, first order thinking is about the immediate, obvious outcomes. Second order thinking involves looking further ahead, considering the and then what, and anticipating the ripple effects. It helps us avoid unintended negative consequences and find more robust, long-term solutions.
That's right. It requires a conscious effort to pause, to question, and to project beyond the immediate. It's about understanding that every action has a chain reaction, and learning to see that chain is a hallmark of wise decision-making.
It really makes you realize how often those quick fixes or easy choices can lead to bigger problems down the road.
They often do. By embracing second-order thinking, we can train ourselves to make choices that are not just good for today, but are also beneficial for tomorrow and the day after that. It's about building a more sustainable and successful future, one thoughtful decision at a time.
It's a powerful idea, moving beyond the immediate gratification to understand the full spectrum of consequences.
Indeed. And that brings us to the end of our discussion on second-order thinking. Next episode, we'll explore Hanlon's razor, which deals with how we interpret the actions of others. Next episode, Hanlon's razor and the benefit of the doubt. Welcome back to Thinking Models. We explored second-order thinking, looking beyond immediate consequences. Now, we're diving into a model that impacts our relationships, Hanlon's razor and the benefit of the doubt.
It's a fascinating one. We often jump to conclusions about why people do what they do, and usually, our first thought is the worst possible one. Hanlon's razor offers a more charitable and often more accurate way to interpret those situations.
Exactly. So, Lisa, what exactly is Hanlon's razor?
Hanlon's razor is a simple aphorism that states, "Never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity."
Never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity. Let's break that down. Malice implies intent to harm. Stupidity covers a whole range of things: ignorance, thoughtlessness, incompetence, or simply making a mistake.
Right.
So, if someone cuts you off in traffic, your immediate reaction might be, "They're a terrible, aggressive driver." But Hanlon's razor suggests a different interpretation. Maybe they just weren't paying attention. Maybe they're lost. Maybe they're having a bad day and their focus is elsewhere.
It's about shifting our default assumption. Instead of assuming the worst, we should first consider the possibility that the person acted out of ignorance, carelessness, or a simple human error, rather than out of intentional ill will.
And this really ties into the concept of giving others the benefit of the doubt. When we apply Hanlon's razor, we're essentially giving someone the benefit of the doubt by not immediately assuming they meant harm.
Think about our work lives. A crucial file is missing, and your first thought is, my colleague Dave is trying to sabotage me. But Hanlon's razor encourages us to consider, did Dave simply forget to attach it? Was there a technical glitch? Was he overwhelmed with other tasks and genuinely overlooked it?
It's liberating, isn't it? If we constantly assume malice, we build up resentment and create unnecessary conflict. By defaulting to understanding, we can often resolve issues more constructively, or at least avoid escalating them when no malice was present.
Absolutely. And this isn't about excusing harmful behavior entirely. If someone repeatedly exhibits actions that cause harm, then we might need to reconsider the stupidity explanation. But the razor is about the initial assumption. It's a tool to prevent us from jumping to conclusions.
It's like a mental filter. Before I get angry, I should first ask myself, is there a simpler, non-malicious explanation for this? It's a way to self-regulate our emotional responses.
Precisely. And it's a powerful tool for fostering empathy. When we understand that people make mistakes, that they have their own struggles and limitations, we become more compassionate. This isn't about being naive. It's about being realistic about human fallibility.
So, to recap, Hanlon's razor is the principle that when interpreting someone's actions, we should first consider explanations related to incompetence, error, or lack of understanding before assuming they acted with malicious intent.
And the practical application of this is giving others the benefit of the doubt. This mental model helps us avoid unnecessary conflict, fosters empathy, and leads to more productive interactions. It encourages us to pause, reflect, and consider the simplest explanation that doesn't involve someone trying to hurt us.
It's a great counterpoint to some of the more analytical models we've discussed. While first principles and systems thinking are about dissecting problems, Hanlon's razor is about how we interact with the people involved in those problems.
It's that balance that makes a truly robust toolkit. We analyze the situation, but we also navigate the human element with understanding. And by a charitable interpretation of actions, we can often find common ground and solutions more quickly.
It really does lead to a less stressful and more connected way of living and working. Instead of constantly being on guard, we can operate with a bit more trust and a bit less suspicion.
Indeed. So as you go through your week, try to catch yourself when you're about to assume malice. Ask if stupidity or a simple mistake could be the actual cause. You might be surprised at how often that's the case, and by how much better you feel by not assuming the worst.
It's a subtle shift, but one with huge implications for our well-being and our relationships. And it perfectly sets us up for our next topic.
Yes, that's right. Next episode, we'll be diving into systems thinking, understanding interconnectedness. Welcome back to Think in Models. Today, we're diving into a crucial one, systems thinking.
Systems thinking. What exactly does it mean?
It's about seeing the forest for the trees. Instead of looking at individual components in isolation, systems thinking helps us understand how all the parts of something interact and influence each other. It's about understanding the whole.
Ah, so it's about interconnectedness. Like how a change in one part of a machine can affect others, even if they seem unrelated at first glance.
Exactly. Think about a thermostat in a room. It's a simple system. If the room gets too cold, the sensor detects it. That signal tells the heating system to turn on. Once the room warms up, it tells the heater to turn off.
And that process repeats constantly. It's a feedback loop.
You've hit on a key concept. Feedback loops are fundamental to systems thinking. There are cycles where the output of a system is fed back into it as input, influencing future outputs. In our thermostat example, the room temperature is the output that feeds back to the sensor, influencing whether the heater stays on or off.
So, a feedback loop can either reinforce a change or counteract it.
Precisely. We call those reinforcing loops and balancing loops. A reinforcing loop amplifies change. Imagine a snowball rolling down a hill. As it rolls, it picks up more snow, gets bigger, and rolls faster, amplifying its growth. This is also sometimes called a positive feedback loop, not because it's good, but because it adds to the existing trend.
That makes sense. And a balancing loop works to stabilize things, like our thermostat example.
Yes, a balancing loop or negative feedback loop works to achieve a goal or maintain stability. It tries to counteract change and keep the system within a certain range. Think about your body temperature. If you get too hot, you sweat to cool down. If you get too cold, you shiver to generate heat. These are balancing loops that keep your body temperature stable.
Okay, that's a great way to visualize it. So, when we're looking at a problem, systems thinking encourages us to identify these loops, the reinforcing ones that might be escalating the issue, and the balancing ones that might be keeping it stuck.
Yes, and it goes deeper. Systems thinking also involves looking for delays. Often, the effects of an action aren't immediate. There can be a lag between cause and effect, and these delays can make systems unpredictable. For example, if a company decides to cut its marketing budget today, the impact on sales might not be felt for several months.
And that delay can lead us to make poor decisions because we might not connect the action to the consequence. We might think everything is fine and then suddenly sales drop.
Exactly. This is where systems thinking helps us see the bigger picture and anticipate ripple effects. It's about understanding the dependencies between different elements. If you change one variable, how will that affect others? And how will those changes, in turn, affect the original variable? This leads us to identify leverage points, places within a complex system where a small change can create a large effect.
That's a powerful idea. Finding those leverage points. It's like finding the secret button that can fix everything, but in a very intelligent, interconnected way. It reminds me a little of the first principles thinking we talked about earlier, but it's more about how things work together rather than breaking things down to their most basic truths.
That's a great connection, Lisa. First principles help us understand the root causes, and systems thinking helps us understand how those root causes interact within a larger structure. It helps us avoid treating symptoms and instead address the underlying dynamics. For instance, if you're trying to reduce traffic congestion, you could build more roads, but that might just encourage more driving, leading to more congestion in the long run. A classic reinforcing loop.
Oh, so building more roads isn't always the answer.
Often it's not. Systems thinking might suggest looking at public transportation, urban planning, or even influencing work schedules to reduce the peak demand. These are often more effective leverage points because they address the underlying drivers of the system. It's about seeing the interconnectedness of the urban environment, the economy, and people's behavior.
So, to recap, systems thinking is about looking at the whole picture, understanding how different parts interact, and identifying those important feedback loops, the reinforcing ones that drive growth or decline, and the balancing ones that maintain stability. We also need to be aware of delays in cause and effect and look for leverage points where a small intervention can have a big impact.
That's a fantastic summary, Lisa. It's a way of thinking that helps us move beyond simple cause and effect and appreciate the complexity and dynamism of the world around us. It's incredibly useful for problem solving, decision making, and understanding almost any situation more deeply. Whether it's a personal goal, a business challenge, or a societal issue, applying systems thinking can reveal insights we might otherwise miss.
It really encourages a more thoughtful and comprehensive approach. Instead of just reacting, we can proactively shape outcomes by understanding the underlying dynamics.
Precisely. And as we continue this series, we'll see how this understanding of interconnectedness directly informs our next topic, leverage. Next episode, leverage, amplifying your impact. Welcome back. Last time we explored systems thinking, how to understand the interconnectedness of things. Now we're diving into a concept that builds directly on that, leverage. It's all about amplifying your impact.
Leverage. That's a fantastic word. In everyday terms, it means using something to gain a greater advantage than you would normally have. Like using a lever to lift a heavy object that you couldn't budge on your own.
Exactly. And in the context of our decisions and actions, leverage is about finding ways to multiply our efforts. Instead of just working harder, we work smarter by finding the right points to apply our energy. Think about it. What feels like a lever in your own life?
That's a great question to get us started. I'd say my ability to delegate tasks at work feels like leverage. When I can hand off something to a colleague who's skilled at it, I free up my own time to focus on more strategic or complex issues.
That's a perfect example of people leverage. You're using other people's time and skills to achieve more. And it's not just about commanding others. It's about collaboration and shared goals. When you can mobilize people effectively, your capacity skyrockets.
So we have time, money, people, and what else? Knowledge?
Yes, knowledge is a huge one. And let's break down these types of leverage. We've touched on people, which is about multiplying your output through others. Then there's time leverage. This is about making your time count for as much as possible. It often involves creating things that continue to work for you even when you're not actively working on them.
Like writing a book or creating a course. Once it's done, it can generate income or influence for years to come, right? It's not a one-to-one exchange of time for money anymore.
Precisely. That product or content is a form of leverage. You invest your time up front, but the returns can far exceed that initial investment. It's about creating assets that have ongoing value.
And money leverage feels pretty straightforward, though sometimes a bit intimidating. Using borrowed money to invest, for example.
Right? Money leverage, often associated with financial investments or business growth, involves using capital to generate returns. A well-placed investment, whether it's your own money or borrowed funds, can amplify your financial gains. But of course, with money leverage comes increased risk. It's a powerful tool, but one that requires careful management.
So, to recap our types of leverage so far, people, time, and money. And the fourth is knowledge. How does knowledge act as leverage?
Knowledge leverage is about using what you know to make better decisions and create more effective strategies. It's about understanding principles, like the mental models we've been discussing, that allow you to solve problems more efficiently. Think about learning a new skill that drastically speeds up a task, or understanding a complex concept that opens up new opportunities. That's knowledge as leverage.
This ties back beautifully to our previous episode on systems thinking. If you understand the underlying system, you can often spot the leverage points, those small inputs that create significant outputs. It's like finding the perfect place to push on a complex machine to make it work more efficiently.
Absolutely. Systems thinking helps us identify where to apply our leverage. Without that understanding, we might be pushing on the wrong parts of the system, wasting our effort. Leverage is about finding those high-impact areas. It's the difference between rowing a boat and using a sail.
I love that analogy. And I think for many of us, the most accessible form of leverage might start with knowledge. We can consciously decide to learn something new that will make us more effective.
Definitely. The pursuit of knowledge, especially understanding fundamental principles, is a form of investing in your future leverage. It's compound interest for your mind. The more you learn, the better equipped you are to find and utilize other forms of leverage.
So, it's not about having a lot of resources initially, but about strategically deploying the resources you have, whether they are time, money, people, or your own understanding, to achieve disproportionately large results.
That's the essence of it. And it's a continuous process. We should always be asking ourselves, how can I multiply my efforts here? Where is the leverage in this situation? It could be adopting a new technology, streamlining a process, or even just changing your perspective.
It's about moving from simply doing to enabling and multiplying. It's the shift from being a worker bee to being an architect of your own productivity and impact.
Think about a simple task. If you have to write a letter to 100 people, you could write each letter individually. That's using your time directly, but it's inefficient. Now, imagine you create a template letter and personalize it with their names. That's time leverage, enabled by your knowledge of how to create a template. Or you could hire an assistant to do the personalization. That's people leverage.
And to make sure we're reinforcing this, it's about recognizing that not all input has equal output. We're looking for the highest ratio. It's the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, applied to our actions and resources.
Exactly, Lisa. So, to summarize what we've covered today, leverage is the principle of amplifying your impact by using your resources strategically. We unpacked 4 key types. First, people leverage, where you multiply your output through the efforts of others. Second, time leverage, creating assets or systems that continue to work for you over time. Third, money leverage, using capital to generate greater returns. And finally, knowledge leverage, applying understanding and wisdom to make more effective decisions and find better solutions.
And understanding systems helps us identify the best places to apply these forms of leverage. It's about working smarter, not just harder, and it's a continuous pursuit.
It's the engine that drives significant progress. Next episode, we'll begin the process of synthesizing all these powerful mental models into your personal toolkit for making smarter decisions and living a more thoughtful life. Next episode, synthesis and application, building your personal toolkit. Welcome back to Thinking Models. Today, we're synthesizing our journey through powerful mental models and building your personal toolkit.
It feels like we've journeyed through so many powerful ways of thinking, Alex. From first principles to systems thinking, it's a lot to take in, but in a good way.
Exactly, Lisa. The goal of this series hasn't just been to introduce you to these models, but to illuminate how they can work together. Think of them like tools in a craftsman's toolbox. No single tool is perfect for every job, but the right combination can help you build anything.
That's a great analogy. So, for listeners who might be feeling a little overwhelmed, how do we start building this toolkit? It can't just be about memorizing names, right?
Absolutely not. Building your toolkit is an active, ongoing process. It starts with understanding, really getting what each model is designed to do. For instance, remember our discussion on first principles? That's about breaking down a problem to its fundamental truths, not just accepting conventional wisdom.
Right? Like figuring out why something works from the ground up rather than just how it's always been done.
Precisely. And then you have inversion, which is looking at a problem backward. If you want to achieve success, what are the surest ways to guarantee failure? Understanding those failure points can then illuminate the path to success.
So, we identify the pitfalls to avoid. That makes sense.
Now, think about how these two connect. If you're using first principles to understand the fundamental mechanics of a problem, and then using inversion to identify potential failure modes, you're creating a much more robust understanding and strategy from the outset. You're not just building, you're building with foresight.
It's like building a house. First principles help you understand the physics of loads and stresses, while inversion helps you anticipate where a storm might hit or where the foundation might weaken.
That's a perfect illustration, Lisa. And what about the circle of competence? Knowing what you know and, crucially, what you don't know. This model is your internal compass, guiding you on when to lean into your expertise and when to seek external advice or defer to others.
That's so important because we can't be experts in everything. It's about recognizing your boundaries.
Indeed. Now, let's bring in opportunity cost. Every decision you make means foregoing something else. By understanding opportunity cost, you're forced to consider the true price of your choices, not just the immediate outlay. Are you spending your limited time and resources on the activity that yields the highest return or the one that feels easiest?
So, it's about evaluating the value of the next best alternative. It makes you pause and think, is this the best use of my effort right now?
Exactly. And this pairs beautifully with probabilistic thinking. When you're weighing those opportunities, you're rarely dealing with certainty. Probabilistic thinking helps you assign likelihoods to outcomes and make decisions that are favorable in the long run, even if they don't always pay off in the short term. It's about playing the odds wisely.
It helps move you away from just hoping for the best and towards making calculated bets.
And when you're making those calculations, Occam's razor becomes invaluable. When faced with competing explanations or solutions, the simplest one is often the best. This model teaches us to pare away unnecessary complexity to find the most elegant and direct path.
It's about not overcomplicating things. If there are two ways to solve a problem, and one involves a dozen steps and the other involves three, and both yield the same result, the three-step solution is usually the winner.
Precisely. But sometimes, the simplest explanation isn't the whole story. That's where second-order thinking comes in. It's not just about the immediate consequence of an action, but the consequences of those consequences. What happens after the initial, simple outcome?
Ah, so it's looking beyond the first domino to see how many others it will knock over. This is where things start getting interconnected.
Which brings us perfectly to systems thinking. We've seen that the world isn't a collection of isolated events, but a web of interconnected parts. Understanding systems thinking reveals how changes in one area can ripple through the entire system. It's about seeing the forest, not just the trees.
It's recognizing that every element influences others, and the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
And in a complex system, leverage points are where you can make the biggest impact. We discussed this with leverage, finding those high-impact areas where a small input can create a disproportionately large output. It's about working smarter, not just harder.
So, if systems thinking helps us see the whole interconnected web, leverage helps us find the strongest threads to pull.
You've got it. And what about Hanlon's razor? That's the reminder to attribute actions to incompetence or oversight before malice. It's a powerful model for fostering better relationships and avoiding unnecessary conflict by assuming good intentions, or at least neutral ones.
It's a really valuable one for interpersonal interactions. Instead of jumping to conclusions that someone is intentionally trying to hurt or thwart you, consider that they might just be having an off day or made a mistake.
Exactly. So, how do you actively build your toolkit from all of this? The first step is conscious awareness. When you face a decision, pause and ask yourself, which mental model or models are relevant here?
So, it's about making it a conscious habit. Like, okay, I have a decision to make. Should I use first principles to understand the core issue? Is this a problem where opportunity cost is critical? Am I falling into a trap of second-order thinking, or am I oversimplifying with Occam's razor?
You're on the right track. You can start by identifying one or two models that resonate most with you and actively try to apply them over the next week. Maybe you focus on applying inversion to your daily tasks. Or perhaps you consciously practice identifying opportunity costs in your choices.
And how do we refine these tools once we've started using them?
Through practice and reflection. The more you use a model, the more intuitive it becomes. And crucially, take time to reflect on your experiences. Did applying mental model X lead to a better outcome? What did you learn from the process? What did you have done differently? This self-reflection is where true mastery begins.
So, it's a cycle. Identify relevant models, apply them consciously, reflect on the results, and then repeat. It's about making these frameworks a part of your natural thought process.
Precisely. Imagine learning a new language. In the beginning, you have to consciously look up words and grammar rules. But with practice, you start speaking more fluently, and the words and structures come to you more naturally. It's the same with mental models. The more you use them, the more they become second nature, enhancing your decision-making and problem-solving abilities.
That's a really encouraging way to put it. It makes the idea of building this toolkit feel achievable, not just daunting.
And remember that these models aren't silos. They feed into each other. For example, your understanding of systems thinking might inform where you look for leverage points. Your circle of competence might guide which probabilistic bets you're more comfortable making. The synthesis is where the real power lies.
It's about seeing how they all connect and amplify each other.
Exactly. So, for the next week, I challenge our listeners to pick one model we've discussed and actively look for opportunities to apply it. Notice the situations where it could be useful, try to implement it, and then reflect on the outcome. This active engagement is the key to building your personal mental model toolkit.
It's about moving from hearing about these ideas to actually living them.
That's the ultimate goal. And in our next episode, we'll delve into how to make this mindset a lifelong pursuit, fostering continuous learning and adaptation. Next episode, the Enthoughtful Life, continuous learning and adaptation. Welcome back to Think in Models, the series exploring mental frameworks for smarter decisions. This is episode 13, and we're talking about living an enthoughtful life.
An enthoughtful life. I love that phrase, Alex. It really captures the essence of what we've been building towards. It's about being intentional with our thinking.
Exactly, Lisa. We've spent the last 12 episodes diving deep into powerful mental models, from first principles and inversion to probabilistic thinking and systems thinking. Now, in this penultimate episode, we're looking at how to weave these tools into our everyday lives, how to live them.
So, when you say enthoughtful, what does that really mean in practice for our listeners? Beyond just knowing the models.
It means actively choosing to engage with these frameworks, not just passively understanding them. It's about cultivating a mindset of continuous learning and adaptation. Think of it like this. Learning a mental model is like acquiring a new tool. An enthoughtful life is about becoming a skilled craftsman who knows exactly which tool to use for any job, and who takes the time to sharpen their tools and learn new ones.
That's a great analogy. So, we've learned about Occam's razor, for instance, the idea that the simplest explanation is often the best. Living an enthoughtful life means consciously applying that. Instead of overcomplicating a problem, we default to looking for the most straightforward solution first.
Precisely. And it's not just about applying one model in isolation. Remember when we discussed systems thinking in episode 10? That's a perfect example of how these models build on each other. To truly understand a complex situation, you might start by breaking it down to its first principles. Then consider the interconnectedness of all the parts using systems thinking, and finally, apply Occam's razor to find the most elegant solution within that system.
It's like building a mental superpower where you have a whole arsenal of ways to look at the world. But what about when things change? The world is constantly evolving. How do we adapt our Enthoughtful approach?
That's the adaptation part, and it's crucial. Life will present you with situations you haven't encountered before. The thoughtful person doesn't just stick to the models they know. They embrace the idea that their understanding is never complete. This connects to what we discussed in episode 4, the circle of competence. You need to be aware of what you don't know and be willing to expand your circle.
So, continuous learning isn't just about reading books. It's about actively seeking out new experiences and information that challenge your existing mental models.
Exactly. It's about being a lifelong student. When you encounter a new problem, you might ask yourself, which mental model best applies here? Or have I encountered something similar before? And how did I approach it then? This constant self-reflection and willingness to learn is what makes the thoughtful life dynamic.
I'm also thinking about leverage from episode 11. Applying our mental models effectively is a form of leverage, isn't it? It allows us to achieve better outcomes with less effort because we're making smarter, more informed decisions.
Absolutely. Leverage isn't just about resources or technology. It's about the power of your thinking. By using these well-honed mental models, you're magnifying your decision-making capacity. You can cut through noise, identify core issues, and generate more effective strategies. So, the thoughtful life is about maximizing that leverage through intentional thought.
It sounds like a commitment. It's not a one-time fix, but an ongoing practice.
It is indeed a practice. And like any practice, there will be days when it feels easier and days when it feels harder. The key is persistence. Think about Hanlon's razor from episode 9. Never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity. This kind of principle, when lived, can save you a lot of unnecessary emotional energy and lead to more constructive interactions. Living in thoughtfully means integrating these principles into your very being, so they become your default reactions.
So, to recap for our listeners, living an thoughtful life means intentionally using these mental models, being aware of how they interconnect, and maintaining a commitment to continuous learning and adaptation. It's about maximizing the leverage of our thinking.
Well said, Lisa. It's about building a robust internal framework that helps you navigate the complexities of the world with greater clarity and confidence. It's about making deliberate, reasoned choices rather than reacting impulsively. This entire journey has been about equipping you with these tools, and this episode is about encouraging you to wield them with skill and intention.
And as we head into our final episode, it feels like a perfect bridge. We've learned the models, we've discussed how to apply them, and now we know that the application is an ongoing, adaptive process.
That's right. In our next episode, we'll bring it all together in a concluding synthesis, giving you a roadmap to build your own personal mastery toolkit using all the mental models we've explored.
Looking forward to it. Thanks for listening.
Welcome. We've explored powerful frameworks for better decisions.
It's been an amazing journey. As we wrap up this 14-episode series, I'm excited to pull it all together. We've covered so much ground.
Absolutely. Today, we're consolidating that knowledge to build your ultimate mental model mastery toolkit. Let's recap everything we've learned and equip you for what's next.
Sounds great. We started with the sheer power of mental models, viewing them as lenses to understand the world and make better choices. They give us structure.
Then, we moved into core principles. First principles thinking taught us to break problems down to fundamental truths, ignoring assumptions. It's like understanding how a machine fundamentally works, not just fixing a part.
And we saw how inversion, thinking backwards, helps too. Instead of asking, "How do I succeed?" we asked, "How do I guarantee failure?" This helps us avoid pitfalls and steer toward our goals.
Next was the circle of competence, understanding the boundaries of your knowledge. Knowing what you know, and more importantly, what you don't know, leads to more reliable decisions.
Reliable decisions also involve opportunity cost. Every choice has a price, what you give up by choosing one option. Recognizing that foregone alternative helps us make more considered choices.
Then we tackled probabilistic thinking. Life is a spectrum of probabilities, not black and white. This model helps us think in terms of likelihoods and odds, navigating uncertainty with confidence.
When things get complicated, Occam's razor is the answer. The simplest explanation is usually the best. It's a great way to cut through the noise by leaning towards explanations with the fewest assumptions.
Building on that, we explored second-order thinking. This goes beyond immediate consequences, considering the ripple effects, the consequences of the consequences. Think of it like playing chess, looking several moves ahead.
A beautiful complement to that was Hanlon's razor. Never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity. This model encourages giving others the benefit of the doubt, assuming unintentional mistakes.
Then we moved into interconnected frameworks like systems thinking. Reality is a complex web. This model helps us understand how different parts of a system influence each other, leading to a more holistic understanding.
And a powerful tool for action within those systems is leverage. We learn to identify factors that create disproportionately large effects with minimal effort. It's about finding the most efficient way to achieve results.
This is where we saw how these models work together. We discussed synthesis and application, encouraging you to build your personal toolkit. It's about understanding how models can be combined and applied to your challenges.
And that led us to embracing continuous learning and adaptation. The world changes, so our understanding must evolve. Being Enthoughtful means seeking new knowledge and updating your models.
And that brings us here to this concluding synthesis. We've given you a powerful arsenal of frameworks. But remember, simply knowing them isn't enough. Mastery comes with consistent practice.
That's a vital point. Think of it like learning a sport. You must practice to master it. Start small. Apply Occam's razor to a problem. Consider the opportunity cost of your next purchase.
Exactly. Make it a habit to pause before a decision and ask, which mental model might be helpful? Is this a first principle situation? Am I considering second-order consequences? Regularly integrating these models makes them intuitive.
As you practice, you'll see patterns and which models work best for certain problems. You'll build confidence in navigating complexity. This series has provided the building blocks for a more sharpened, adaptable, and effective mind.
This is your toolkit. We've covered the power of mental models, deconstructing reality with first principles, thinking backwards with inversion, respecting your circle of competence, understanding opportunity cost, navigating uncertainty with probabilistic thinking, embracing simplicity with Occam's razor, looking beyond the immediate with second-order thinking, extending grace with Hanlon's razor, understanding interconnectedness with systems thinking, amplifying your impact with leverage, and the importance of synthesis and continuous learning.
It's been an incredible journey and a privilege to share it. We hope this series has equipped you with the mental frameworks to approach life's complexities with clarity and confidence.
Indeed, go forth, practice, experiment, and build your mastery. Thanks for listening to the series.